Passkeys are coming, and they are going to replace passwords. Can you imagine a future where you don't have to remember different passwords for different sites? Where you don't have to rely on a password manager to create strong, unique passwords so that you're not as susceptible to brute force attacks? Or where your IT support desk doesn't have to spend hours upon hours helping users reset their passwords because they got locked out of something, right? Sounds amazing. But what are passkeys? How do they work? And just how are passkeys different from the passwords that we've all been using for decades now? In this video, we're going to dive into everything that you need to know about passkeys. We'll talk about the current status of passkey technology. And by the end of the video, you'll agree that you too should be using passkeys. I have been using YubiKeys in my own daily life for well over 3 years now. I published my first YubiKey video called You Should Be Using YubiKeys back in October of 2020, and I still use the exact same YubiKeys that I featured in that video today. I am a proud YubiKey user, which is why I'm very excited that Yubico is the sponsor of this video. And they're giving everyone watching the video $5 off the purchase of any YubiKey 5 series or Security Key series purchase with coupon code Crosstalk. Full details are down in the description below. Yubico is a longtime member of the FIDO Alliance, meaning that they're on the front lines of increasing security, preventing phishing, and shaping the future of authentication. And that future is passkeys. So then, what are passkeys, right? With all of these different types of two-factor authentication out there, it can certainly get confusing to pile on new technology. I mean, how is a passkey different from just using a password? Or using SMS or Google Authenticator for two-factor authentication? And where do passkeys fall in the hierarchy of best security practices? Passkeys are a consumer-friendly version of the FIDO2 and WebAuthn security standards. YubiKeys have been using what's now known as passkeys for about 5 years now, so you might have already set up FIDO2 authentication with some popular websites and services such as Google or Apple or Microsoft Azure, Facebook or Twitter. FIDO2 is different from the TOTP or time-based one-time passcodes that you get from Google Authenticator and similar applications, in that rather than being a time-based code that you're inputting as your second factor of authentication, it's a private key. Your device holds the private key, and then it pairs with a public key that is stored on the website or service that you're trying to access. These FIDO2 private keys need to be stored in a vault. For me personally, my vault for storing these FIDO2 private keys is my YubiKeys. I have like 3 of these for redundancy. This technology is great for a guy like me who's very security conscious and who understands why FIDO2 authentication is far superior to passwords and even far superior to TOTP codes generated by my Authenticator app. But what about non-technical people, right? What about higher levels of security for my wife or my dad or my kids who don't understand the differences between FIDO2 or TOTP or passwords? These are the people who are most susceptible to hacking and phishing. Weak passwords are responsible for an estimated 81% of all hacking-related breaches. So then, how can we bring FIDO2 levels of security to the general public? This is where passkeys come into play. So originally, passkey technology was called Discoverable WebAuthn FIDO Credential. And then Apple, who's a master of marketing, stepped in and said, let's just call it passkeys. And so passkeys are the same level of FIDO2 authentication that have been available on the YubiKeys for years, but they are delivered in a consumer-friendly way with consumer-friendly features. Rather than having to carry around a YubiKey as a vault for storing your passkeys, your vault now becomes your Apple ecosystem of products, right? Or your Google Chrome and Android ecosystem of products. So using the Apple ecosystem as an example, I can save and store passkeys on my iPhone, my iPad, my Mac, everything protected by my Apple ID and synchronized via the iCloud keychain, very similar with Google. This means that for any website or service that supports passkeys, you can now log in without a password by using FaceID or TouchID to authenticate. And you might be saying, Chris, This is nothing new. I use FaceID to log into apps like all the time. And yes, exactly. That is why passkeys are the right choice for general consumers. They're already used to this type of authentication. Passkeys are the same type of FIDO2 authentication that you get with the YubiKey, but with some additional consumer-friendly features. First is the ability to work seamlessly with your existing devices, right? So if you're an Apple user, you can use passkeys across all of your Apple devices with iCloud. If you're an Android user, you can sync passkeys across your Android devices in Google Chrome. And if you're like me, a guy who uses all kinds of different devices, like my Windows PC and a Samsung laptop and my Apple iPhone and iPad, there are a number of third-party products that are building in support for passkeys. Most notably are password managers such as 1Password and Dashlane. So more on those in just a bit. Passkeys also allow for sharing of authentication. So in the Apple ecosystem, you're able to share your passkeys with other people by using AirDrop, like right now. And in iOS 17, you'll be able to create user groups to share passwords and passkeys with your friends and family, a feature that I'm sure won't make streaming services like Netflix very happy, but it's going to be incredibly convenient for those shared family accounts. This type of passkey sharing also sets up two different levels of passkey security. Synced passkeys that can be shared between devices and with friends and family, and more secure hardware-bound passkeys that are tied to a specific hardware device, such as a YubiKey. And I make that distinction because I know that my audience out there is thinking, wait a minute, if passkeys can be shared with other users and then just airdropped from like one device to another, doesn't that make them less secure? And the answer is actually yes. But while synced passkeys are less secure than hardware-bound passkeys, they are still more secure than any other type of authentication commonly in use today. Passwords aside, the most secure type of TOTP is still less secure than the least secure type of passkeys. Let me say that one more time because this is super important to understand. Other forms of two-factor authentication like SMS-based codes and TOTP Google Authenticator type authentication is less secure than even the least secure version of passkeys that feature FIDO2 authentication. The simplicity of passkeys does a very good job of hiding the sophisticated level of security that they provide. Apple has a great chart that shows the security differences between the various types of authentication. At the very left, we have memorized passwords, which are susceptible to guessing and brute force hacking attempts because people don't tend to memorize strong random strings of characters. People are also prone to reuse passwords across multiple sites. And of course, any password is going to be vulnerable to phishing attempts or server hacks. If you use a password manager, you're definitely stepping up your security game. Password managers that create strong, unique passwords help to eliminate the possibility of brute force attacks, as well as the reusing of passwords. But these passwords are still susceptible to phishing attempts, and if a service that you're using gets hacked, your salted hashed password will still fall into the hands of attackers. Next, we have super savvy security users such as me, and hopefully you, who use a combination of a password manager plus a second factor of authentication. At the minimum, SMS-based two-factor or even TOTP using Google Authenticator or another similar type of application. This is the best type of account security widely available today for services that offer it. Now, many do, but some still don't. I'm looking at you, Chase Bank. So while the combination of a password manager and SMS or TOTP two-factor authentication is a super strong method of protecting your accounts, it's not perfect. TOTP codes and especially SMS-based two-factor authentication remain susceptible to phishing attacks, and server leaks are still a problem. I mean, case in point, we recently saw a breach of the LastPass password manager in which hackers compromised LastPass's backup storage and were able to get their hands on the main password vault for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of users. If your LastPass vault was secured with a relatively weak password, it could be brute forced. And now the hackers have all of your passwords completely bypassing a two-factor challenge. That's like robbing a bank by stealing the whole bank vault out of the back, right? The security guard up front was completely useless. Finally, we have passkeys. Passkeys are unique for each site or service, and they can't be guessed. They're a public and private key pair. If your device gets stolen, the thief is not going to be able to use FaceID or TouchID. They'd have to know your PIN to get in. And your passkey can't be phished because it's tied to your device. FIDO2 authentication is designed to prevent phishing because there's literally nothing to phish. And finally, what about server leaks or hacks, right? Server leaks don't matter when it comes to passkeys because any website or service that you're connecting to only has your public key. The server never receives a copy of your private key. When you authenticate with a passkey, the server sends your device a challenge that only your private key has the answer to. If the challenge is successful, you're granted access. But the private key answer to the challenge happens locally on your device. All you're sending back to the server is whether or not the challenge was successful. So now imagine a situation where a company gets hacked. If there's a catastrophic data breach where a hacker is able to get a database of salted hashed passwords, they could start to brute force those accounts while bypassing any two-factor authentication. I mean, sure, if they were able to crack passwords and you had 2FA enabled on that account, they're not going to be able to log in as you to that particular site. But considering that many people reuse the same passwords on multiple sites, they can now start guessing around to try to find matches that they can then compromise. Or they can start phishing attempts to try to bypass your 2FA. If instead everyone was using passkeys, then the only thing stored with the company that got hacked is the public key side of your FIDO2 key pair. It's completely useless to a hacker without the private key, and there's no password to brute force at all. Or in other words, passkey authentication means that you never have to trust the company that you're authenticating with to keep your data safe. And because of all those reasons, passkeys are just more secure than even using a password manager with the strongest level of TOTP security. All right, we've talked up to this point mostly about the consumer space, but what about the enterprise space? Can you imagine a world where you as an IT administrator for an organization no longer have to deal with user password resets? So much time and productivity is wasted trying to recover lost passwords. I mean, we're not there yet, but companies are actively working on enterprise passkey solutions. Google just announced last month that Google Workspace users, such as Crosstalk Solutions, can now participate in an open beta, allowing their users to use passkeys instead of passwords. But enterprise-level passkeys also bring enterprise-level problems, right? Such as, how do IT administrators manage user-level passkeys, especially if those users are using their own personal devices for work purposes? How can administrators prevent users from sharing employee passkey credentials with unauthorized users? And how do passkeys factor into industry compliance and regulatory requirements? I mean, all of these issues have yet to be ironed out, but for now, companies can choose to utilize FIDO2 authentication on hardware-bound passkeys like YubiKeys instead of synced passkeys until all of these issues have been worked out. All right, so now on to the fun stuff, right? Let's take a look at passkeys in action. First of all, you can check out passkeys.directory, which is a community-driven index of websites, apps, and services provided by 1Password. On Passkeys.directory, you can see which sites and services currently support passkeys, and there's also a tab for voting for passkey support. The notion there is that the more votes a company receives, it incentivizes them to implement passkeys. On the supported list is Best Buy, so a website that I already have a login for. To set up a passkey for Best Buy, I first log in normally. Then I go to Account Settings, I click on Passkey, then I click on Create a Passkey, continue when asked for confirmation, and then it verifies my identity with FaceID. And that's it. I'm all set up now. When I log out of Best Buy on my phone and then log back in, I can simply choose Sign in with a passkey, and it does the FaceID verification again, and then I'm signed in. No password needed. Now, since that passkey has been stored on my iPhone and synced with iCloud, I can now immediately go over to my iPad and use the same passkey to sign into Best Buy again. Just click Sign in with Passkey, verify identity with TouchID or FaceID, and I am logged in. But what about my PC, right? So in that case, I can go to bestbuy.com, click sign in, then choose Passkey, and we have the option of using a phone or tablet here. When you click that option, you get a Passkey QR code. When you scan the QR code with your iPhone and then again verify your identity with Face ID, you're securely logged in on your browser window. All right, so this is the way that passkeys can be used to authenticate with streaming services on like a smart TV, for example. Now, let's say I want to share my passkey with my wife so that she can also log into Best Buy. I find the Best Buy password in my iCloud keychain, I click the share button, and then pops up my wife's phone as being available for airdrop, and she can accept the passkey. When she goes to Best Buy, she can now log in with the shared passkey using her Face ID, just like I did earlier. With my passkey now all set up, I can log into Best Buy anytime without a password and be confident that my login is protected against phishing, since the passkeys are stored on my own devices and authenticated with Face ID or Touch ID. I also don't have to worry about what happens if Best Buy gets hacked and leaks out a huge database of passwords, since the only thing Best Buy knows about is my public key. Now imagine if most of the sites and services that you use utilized passkeys. Oh my God, life would be so much better. Especially when having to log into streaming services that always seem to forget your password and then make you type in a long string of characters with your TV remote, right? I'm looking at you, Disney Plus. But while passkeys are an incredibly promising technology backed by some of the biggest names in the industry, they are not fully mature yet. In my Best Buy example, while I can opt to set up passkey logins, you still need a password to initially sign up for the site. And even after the passkey's been set up, there's no option for removing the password and only using the passkey. Right? So we're getting close, but passkeys are still pretty early in the adoption process. And if I know my viewers, I know the next question everyone has is, well, passkeys seem great, but now you're trusting Apple or Google to manage those keys for you, and I don't trust Apple or Google. And I'll say that yes, there is going to be some level of trust that has to be placed into the hands of a big corporation like Apple or Google, but it doesn't have to only be Apple or Google. There are third-party password managers such as 1Password, Bitwarden, and Dashlane who have already announced that they're working on the ability to be your passkey manager. Just like in my iPhone, where I have the option of changing my password manager to 1Password, I would also be able to tell my phone to use 1Password for my passkeys. And if you still don't feel like trusting any other company with your passkeys, you can always use YubiKeys for FIDO2 authentication. That's the way that I'm moving forward. So I'm going to be using hardware-bound passkeys on my YubiKey devices for my most sensitive accounts, right? My financial accounts, my email, my password manager, my work accounts. Then for the accounts that aren't as sensitive, like my login to Best Buy or eBay or Adobe, I can set up passkeys and be confident that they won't be phished or leaked out to the public in a hack of some sort. So now let's review our final hierarchy of account security from worst to best, all right? Memorized passwords. Absolutely terrible for security, susceptible to brute force attempts, often reused on multiple sites, just awful. Stop doing this, right? A password manager like 1Password with strong, unique passwords for each site. This is way better than memorized passwords, but it can still be phished or leaked in a hack. A password manager with strong, unique passwords plus SMS or TOTP two-factor authentication enabled. Now we're getting a lot stronger, but still phishable and susceptible to hacking, like in our LastPass example. Very secure, but not perfect. Next, we have synced passkeys using Apple, Google, or like a third party to manage the keys on your devices. Definitely the most secure option so far and should be rolled out and adopted as widely as possible. And finally, we have hardware-bound passkeys like YubiKey's FIDO2 authentication. This is one of the highest levels of security available today, and it should absolutely be used for your most sensitive accounts. It's not shareable or copyable, and it lives on a physical hardware device that has to be present in order to authenticate. And remember, you can get $5 off any YubiKey 5 Series or Security Key Series purchase with coupon code Crosstalk. So I hope you have learned a thing or two about passkeys and are going to start taking advantage of them wherever you see the passkey symbol. Hopefully over the coming years, we're going to see much wider adoption of passkeys, giving all of those scammers and hackers out there very few options for breaking into our accounts. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks again to Yubico for sponsoring this video. And if you'd like to keep this party going, I have hand-selected 2 videos on the right here for you to watch next. The top video is my original You Should Be Using YubiKeys video, and the bottom video details how to set up FIDO2 authentication for your Apple devices.